everyone, Novels Wonderland here. Thank you all for the love and support you've shown me and the channel.
MarvelGodzilla starting as a level 2 mutant, chapter 109 to 115. 109, that's the situation, sir. Sitwell did not hesitate for long. Based on S data analysis, that unidentified flying object was most likely not some kind of drone at all but a person. Nick's expression did not change. Not only did he know it was a person, he also knew that person was Tony Stark. That was hardly a secret to him. But hearing it come out of this Hydra agent's mouth gave it a very different meaning. Nick Fury already knows even this much. Sitwell cautiously glanced at Nick, his heart jolting again. As expected of the director of S. He really was unfathomable. There is a very high probability that it is a brand new weapon developed by Tony Stark. A wearable humanoid combat suit. It stands close to 2 meters tall, can likely exceed Mach 2, and most likely has various miniature missiles and countermeasures integrated into the armor itself. Its combat capabilities should be extremely strong. Nick showed just the right amount of curiosity. How did you figure that out? You know I'm very sensitive to data. With all the fragmented clues S has gathered, piecing together a plausible conclusion like this isn't difficult for me. Sitwell had prepared that excuse long ago. Without changing expression, he slipped in a flattering remark. Without your recognition, I never would have had such a good chance to prove myself. Very good. I was right about you. Nick laughed inwardly, though his face remained unreadable. That is all I can estimate about the weapon for now. Sitwell understood the principle that the more you said, the more likely you were to slip up. So instead of getting carried away, he decisively changed topics. As for Tony Stark's kidnapping, there is a very high probability that it was the result of internal conflict within Stark Industries. Obadiah Stane likely orchestrated the whole incident himself in an attempt to seize control of the company. This information has not yet been officially verified, so you may not be aware of it. Sitwell casually praised himself again. I know you place great importance on Stark Industries, so I took the initiative and analyzed it in advance. I can confirm that the information is accurate. You did well. Nick was genuinely a little surprised. Hydra's intelligence network far exceeded his expectations. They even had a clear grasp of the internal struggle within Stark Industries. I'm glad it meets with your approval. Seeing that, Sitwell immediately nodded with obvious satisfaction. Then I'll get back to work and do my best to fully confirm my conclusions. You're capable. Keep it up. Nick stepped over to him and gave him some solemn encouragement. Only after Sitwell left, thoroughly pleased with himself, did Nick stroke his chin and sit back down in his chair. The information on Obadiah is actually useful. I'll pass it along to Stark when I get the chance. Consider it a favor. Nick sat there and thought. Ever since learning that Hydra had not been completely wiped out all those years ago, but had instead used S to rebuild itself and grow stronger in recent years, the man who had always regarded S as his personal domain had flown into a rage. After calming down, he conducted a careful investigation over a period of time, and as expected, uncovered quite a few parasites inside S. But after decades of infiltration, Hydra's reach had by now become terrifyingly deep. In other words, S was no longer the S it once had been. On another level entirely, Hydra and S had already achieved a kind of symbiosis. Without Hydra, the present-day S would most likely collapse on the spot and lose its ability to function altogether. When Nick realized that not even he, as director of S, could possibly purge Hydra completely in a short period of time, he chose another method without hesitation. If Hydra could not be eliminated, then fine. He simply would not eliminate it. Agents had their uses. Hydra, naturally, had its uses too. Very soon, Nick picked out a portion of S personnel and placed them within a circle he considered trustworthy. People like Coulson, Hill, Natasha Romanoff, and Clint Barton. At the same time, he deliberately singled out people like Sitwell and Rumlow. Compared to ordinary agents, these Hydra operatives, in order to keep their identities hidden for good, would rack their brains to complete every assignment. In certain situations, they would even mobilize Hydra's resources for the sake of AS. Sitwell, just now, was a textbook example. Today, he could betray part of Hydra's intelligence in order to advance himself and gain recognition. Tomorrow, for a higher position and greater power, he could keep crossing one line after another. If one Sitwell resisted temptation, then another Sitwell, one who failed to resist, would inevitably appear. No matter who they were, human nature guaranteed that some Hydra agents would take that step. Nick Fury had never trusted people. He only trusted human nature. And sure enough, after a carefully controlled push from him, Sitwell had appeared right on cue. He did not need many people like that. 2 or 3 were enough. No matter how high they climbed, as long as they remained within a controllable range, Nick could use them more easily to achieve his goals and pry Hydra's power loose for his own purposes. S most important project right now is the helicarrier. Nick flipped through the documents in his hand, a strange light flickering in his one eye. I still need time to remove these people from the helicarrier project roster one by one. I just can't make it too obvious. I need to find a way to make them take themselves out of it. No one gets to lay a hand on my ass. Thoughts surged endlessly through Nick's mind. Hydra is a festering disease. There's no way to cut it out in a single day. The right path is to make full use of it, wear it down bit by bit and move slowly. Once he had run through the entire plan in his head again, and confirmed there were no gaps, Nick finally let out a quiet breath. Well, Director Fury. You seem to be in a pretty good mood. Just as Nick had completely destroyed all the documents, a familiar voice suddenly came from the other side of the office without the slightest warning. Nick turned toward the source of the voice at once. It had been quite a while since he had seen Fenris, and for a moment, the feeling of unexpectedly missing him rose in his chest. Compared to Hydra, dealing with Fenris was far easier. As long as he kept his sense of proportion and adjusted his attitude properly, a being with that level of power simply would not stoop to playing mind games with him. A familiar dimensional portal opened. Accompanied by the sound of 2 sets of footsteps, 2 figures stepped out in front of Nick the next moment. Tony Stark. How did those 2 end up together? Nick quickly rose to his feet, and smiling, invited them both to sit down nearby. There was not a trace left of the deep, calculating look that had filled his eyes just moments ago. Nick Fury, did my father leave behind a file with S? Back then? Tony had no intention of exchanging pleasantries. He got straight to the point. Where is that file now? I'm here to take it back. End of chapter. Get plus 30 extra chapters on P at TR3 on Zalem. Every 300 power stones equals 1 bonus chapter drop. Thanks for reading. Chapter 110, 110131 for words. Nick tilted his head, dug at one ear, and stared at Tony in disbelief. A box Howard Stark left behind. That's right. Hand it over. Tony extended a hand with a grim expression and stressed each word. Immediately. Fenris, you told him. Howard Stark had been one of S.'s founding figures. Other than Nick himself, no one should have known about the classified materials he left behind. So how did Tony know? Hydra infiltrating an intelligence agency like this was one thing, but now even Stark Industries could casually penetrate S. Had the S. he led really rotted that badly. No matter how much friction there is between a father and son, it's still closer than anything between either of them and an outsider. The moment Nick's gaze started drifting again, Fenris could tell at a glance that he was off overthinking things, no matter how well he tried to hide it. I told you to bring it out, and now you're dragging your feet. Hurry up and hand it over. Hearing that completely impolite threat, Nick's expression stiffened. At the same time, he slammed a hand down hard on the desk. Fenris, I'm the head of a major organization. Don't try to bully me with your words. It's just a box, right? He can have it. Coulson, get in here. After giving Coulson a few instructions, Nick came over and sat down across from Fenris, staring him straight in the eyes. Happy now? Very happy, very happy. Looking at the aggressive, puffed-up Nick, Fenris grinned and let out a snort of laughter. I was planning to give this to Tony once the timing was right. Nick dropped back onto the sofa with a weary sigh. He's still too immature. I don't know whether getting this early will be a good thing or a bad thing. You can't even sort out your own S, and now you're trying to help Howard raise his kid too. Looking at Nick sitting there with a troubled expression, Fenris could not resist teasing him. How's your investigation into Hydra going? You're a teacher who barely even shows up for class, and yet you're awfully interested in S private business. Nick shot Fenris a glance. That said, there have been frequent reports lately of beings that seem to be super soldiers showing up in various places and causing quite a bit of unrest. There's a decent chance Hydra's behind it. They really are a headache. Unfortunately, there's no solid evidence. Fenris rolled his eyes. Nick Fury only ever cared about evidence when he was asking the World Security Council for money. Well, that's not entirely fair. Nick coughed awkwardly. Super soldiers. After Coulson left under orders to retrieve Howard's files, Tony sat quietly to one side. For once, he actually looked a little tense. Howard had told him some things, but he had not told him everything. So Tony only knew that it was a very valuable gift. He had no idea what was actually inside. But the second he heard the word super soldier come out of Nick's mouth, his ears practically perked up on the spot. Explain that. What super soldiers? Where did super soldiers come from? Tony shifted over in one quick motion until he was right beside Fenris, staring at Nick with a severe expression that looked like he wanted to tear him apart. Super soldiers are exactly what they sound like. Nick did not hide anything. He spread his hands and gave a brief explanation. Ever since Dr. Erskine died unexpectedly, I don't know how many people have been trying to replicate the super soldier serum. So if one or two half-finished versions pop up now and then, that's nothing unusual. Give me a copy of those files. I can help you deal with those super soldier threats. Tony got straight to the point. A fair trade. What do you say? The moment he heard that, Nick sat up at once. His gaze swept carefully over Tony from top to bottom. After a moment, he withdrew that scrutinizing look. Have you considered joining my Avengers initiative? Becoming an Avenger. A superhero who helps keep world peace. Earlier, after learning Tony's identity, Nick had already gone to him personally once. But at the time, Tony had been completely focused on his new armor and rejected the offer without hesitation. Now, however, faced with Nick's second invitation, he actually hesitated for a moment. I'll think about it. After considering it, Tony ultimately shook his head, and did not agree right away. No problem. The moment Nick saw there was an opening, he made the call immediately and handed over all the intelligence Tony wanted. Once you've made up your mind, contact me. The Avengers Initiative will welcome you anytime. Director, the item you asked for is here. With the business settled, the three of them were chatting when Coulson came in through the door pulling a massive box behind him. Fenris, let's go, let's go. Tony strode over without hesitation, hoisted the box onto his shoulder as easily as if it weighed nothing, even though it normally took two people to lift, and kept urging Fenris on. He was already beyond impatient. Just as Fenris and Tony were about to step through the portal, Coulson suddenly spoke up from the side and stopped him. What is it? Fenris turned back. After dealing with him so many times, he and Coulson actually got along pretty well. I'm heading to Mexico. So the job of bringing Director Fury to Xavier's school will probably fall to someone else from now on. Coulson gave Fenris his trademark smile. I hear Mexico is a beautiful wonderland. It's just a little far from Washington. We'll meet again if we get the chance. You're going to Mexico? Fenris froze for a moment. As if something had occurred to him, he quickly nodded. All right. I hope everything goes smoothly for you. After a round of goodbyes, Fenris left the office with Tony. You two seem pretty close. Is it because you miss the feeling of being carried around in Fenris's arms while flying all over the place? Nick glanced at Coulson and asked in a sour tone. He still had not gotten to experience that himself. Maybe I should find an excuse to have Carol. A strange thought suddenly surfaced in Nick's mind, and his gaze instinctively drifted toward the place where that pager was stored. Halfway through the thought, Nick snapped back to himself and hurriedly strangled the dangerous idea before it could go any further. Director, you wouldn't enjoy that feeling. Coulson smiled with the honest, harmless look of a good man. Meanwhile, in Tony's luxurious workshop, Fenris, I've unlocked all your access. Feel free to look around. After hurriedly tossing out that line, Tony carried the box off to one side and immediately got to work with a flurry of clanking and banging. All right. Fenris knew he would not be much help anyway. Besides, once Tony upgraded the arc reactor again, the person who would benefit most directly would be him. What's this? On the cluttered workbench, a neat little glass case suddenly caught Fenris's attention. A gift for Tony Stark from Pepper Potts. A small note had been casually stuck to the box. But now the gift case, which had once held the reactor Tony had removed, was completely empty. Where's the gift? Did Pepper just give him an empty box? Fenris picked it up and examined it closely. Very quickly, he noticed signs that the bottom had been forcibly damaged. Tony, unless I'm mistaken, someone broke into your house. End of chapter. Get plus 30 extra chapters on P at TR3 on Zalem. Every 300 power stones equals 1 bonus chapter drop. Thanks for reading. Chapter 111, 11113 for 5 words. Big announcement. Hi, everyone. Months since I talked directly here XD, not really the best talker maybe because I spend all day reading, as how prices of everything is going up and everyday life is getting expensive. I decided to reduce the price of my sub on P at TR30N. I don't want to make my readers stop having a good time, so this is the least I can do. To cushion a little the loss of money, I added a tier for people that want to support me, and have access to the polls for new fanfics and incoming events. Just a $1 1 XD. The next event will be a poll to pick one of my fanfic to get 10 extra chapters. Thanks for your support. Fenris looked over the gift box in his hand with obvious interest, then cheerfully teased Tony beside him. That little thief really seems to like you. What thief? Tony lifted his head out of the box. Once he saw what Fenris was holding, he waved it off without much concern. There are only a handful of people who can even get in here. No way they'd be thieves. Pepper probably brought it back in again. All right. Fenris shrugged and put the box back exactly where it had been. A videotape, some notes, blueprints. Tony lowered his head and got back to work, sorting through the contents of the box one item at a time. The key to the future. Fenris's reminder passed like a brief little aside, and Tony quickly shoved it to the back of his mind. He dug out an old-fashioned projector from the side, and soon Howard's recording was cast onto the screen. A better life, a healthier body, and the first real possibility in human history of maintaining world peace all come from technology. The moment he heard his father's younger voice, Tony's hand froze over the notes. Tony looked up, and his gaze immediately turned distant. Just a short while ago, he had seen Howard already grown old. Back then, his father's hair had been white, and only traces of his younger self could still be seen in him. But the Howard in the video was in the prime of his life, carrying that familiar face Tony had long forgotten, buried deep beneath the dust of memory. That face had blurred over the course of Tony's youth, warped by stubborn resentment, silent rivalry, and all the grievances he had carried in his heart. Yet now, 20 years later, after reaching the age his father had once been, it had become clear again. The video kept playing. When Tony saw footage of his younger self running wild in his father's workshop, a smile tugged at his lips before he could stop it. When all the speeches were over, Howard leaned against an enormous model and softly called his name. Hearing his father call to him, Tony instinctively raised his head, just in time to meet Howard's deep gaze aimed straight at the camera. In that instant, their eyes seemed to cross decades of time and meet in complete silence. "Tony, you're still too young now. You don't understand any of this yet, so I recorded this for you in advance." Howard's voice was calm and unhurried. His hand brushed lightly across the model behind him as he spoke with quiet meaning. "All of this was built for you. One day, you'll realize it represents more than just human invention. It is also the key to the future, and the greatest achievement of my life. Everything you want from the future, you'll find here." As the image flickered, the camera swept past several unusual structures in the model of the Stark Expo. "This is..." Something shifted in Tony's eyes as he stared at the recording. He sat up straight at once. "I'm limited by my era, but one day you'll understand all of this. And when that day comes, you'll have the power to change the world. Tony, no matter when it is, there has only ever been one greatest creation of mine. That is you." Howard stared directly into the camera. The light above cast a shadow across his face, covering the brilliance in his eyes. When the final sentence fell, Howard Stark smiled faintly. The next second the recording ended and every image faded into darkness. "You are my greatest invention." Tony remembered hearing those words from Howard with his own ears after taking the heart-shaped herb. One father had been young, the other already old. The aged voice and the younger one echoed over and over in Tony's ears, but the heavy love overflowing from both of them left him standing there in a daze. After standing there for a long while, Tony finally sniffed, quietly wiped the moisture from the corner of his eye, and called to the side. Fenris answered at once. "Have you figured out what kind of gift Mr. Stark actually left you? More or less?" The heart-shaped herb did not seem to have made his brain any smarter, but Howard's hint had not been particularly obscure. For Tony, it was easy enough to work out. Tony let out a quiet sigh. After steadying his emotions, he moved over to Fenris's side. "What are you looking at? How you're planning to deal with me?" Without changing expression, Fenris handed over the file in front of him. The screen clearly displayed a huge string of messy data. Among the folders, the entry labeled Fenris Series was especially eye-catching. From video files to written records, from the Liberty Island battle to the Arctic base. "Pretty comprehensive, huh?" Fenris's voice drifted past Tony's ear, low and chilly enough to send a shiver down his spine. "Tony, I treated you like a friend, and this is how you do me." "Fenris, this is a misunderstanding. I never planned to hide it from you in the first place." Meeting Fenris's complicated gaze, Tony's neck shrank back on instinct. "Look, didn't I tell you from the start? You said researching you was pointless, so I wasn't planning to keep going with it anyway." Fenris nodded lightly. "That's it." Tony blinked, completely caught off guard that Fenris had let the subject go that easily. Fenris suddenly changed tone, and the deliberately stiff expression on his face instantly melted away. "Since you've already named a suit after me, it's not too much to ask for one for myself to play around with, right?" If nothing else, Fenris had been standing right there when Tony created the new folder. Tony blinked again. With Fenris's level of strength, would he even need one of Tony's suits? Fenris's playful mood immediately flared up, and he sat forward with excitement. "Think about it. Someday, when those enemies finally manage to break my armor, they'll discover that. That's vicious." Tony instantly understood what he meant, and a sly grin spread across his face. "No problem. Leave it to me. I'll make an extra set for you with every new generation of armor from now on. But you've got to help me too." A burst of strange laughter rang out. The two of them looked at each other and saw the same satisfaction in each other's eyes. Very deal. Stark Industries. R&D Department. Standing in front of the towering steel beast, Obadiah ran his hands over the ironmonger armor again and again, unable to put it down. As he spoke, he pulled out a glowing arc reactor and gently fitted it into Ironmonger's chest. The moment Ironmonger's eyes lit up, a vicious smile spread across Obadiah's face. "Tony, if you want to shut down the weapons division, if you want to destroy the work of my last 30 years, then prepare yourself to face the wrath of a steel monster." End of chapter. Get plus 30 extra chapters on P at TR3 on Zalem. Every 300 power stones equals 1 bonus chapter drop. Thanks for reading. Chapter 112, 112. 1470 words. Big announcement. Hi, everyone. Months since I talked directly here XD, not really the best talker maybe because I spend all day reading, as how prices of everything is going up and everyday life is getting expensive. I decided to reduce the price of my sub on P at TR30N. I don't want to make my readers stop having a good time, so this is the least I can do. To cushion a little the loss of money, I added a tier for people that want to support me and have access to the polls for new fanfics and incoming events. Just a $1 1 XD. The next event will be a poll to pick one of my fanfic to get 10 extra chapters. Thanks for your support. Jarvis, scan the model of the 1970 for Stark Expo. Inside the spacious room, the moment Tony Stark gave the order, a massive blue holographic model was projected into the air. Fenris, look. Tony stroked his chin and stared thoughtfully at the huge globe in the center of the model. Doesn't this thing kind of look like an atomic nucleus? An atomic nucleus? Fenris's eyes lit up, and he slapped his palm with sudden realization. I know that one. Delicious food. Just go find somewhere to lie down. Tony smacked a hand against his face and let out a helpless sigh. I'll make you something good later. I am here. Mark the globe. Remove the walkways. Remove the parking lot. Remove the exits and entrances. As the structure in the model became more and more simplified, a clear blueprint gradually took shape in Tony's mind, and his eyes grew brighter and brighter. Use the pavilion structure as the core atomic framework. Construct the protons and neutrons. The moment the final command was given, Jarvis's supercomputer brain kicked into overdrive. The Stark Expo hologram shifted along with it. Not long after, a complex atomic model appeared before Tony's eyes. Watching the concept in his mind gradually simulated into reality by the computer, Tony drew in a deep breath, covered his eyes, and almost did not dare keep looking. Sir, congratulations. You have discovered a new element capable of replacing palladium as the core of the arc reactor. Only when Jarvis spoke did Tony open his eyes again. A stable, fully formed atomic model was quietly rotating in midair. When the model enlarged several times over, more than 100 electrons raced around the central nucleus, scattering gorgeous blue fragments of light through the slightly dim laboratory. After all this time, you can still teach me one more lesson. Moisture quietly welled in Tony's eyes. He shook his head and said with emotion, Jarvis, this isn't my invention. It's another genius's invention. All I did was recreate it. Fenris, did you see that? I did it. Once the flood of emotion settled down again, Tony looked at the tiny model in his hand, and could no longer suppress the excitement bursting inside him. He sprang up from the chair in a single bounce. But instead of the congratulations and cheering he had expected, Tony turned his head, and found that the man who had just sworn he would share in the joy was now fast asleep, eyes closed, with an arc reactor balanced on his forehead. I really got emotional for nothing. Tony curled his lip, then casually found a large hammer, and weighed it in his hand. The weight was just right. Perfect for knocking down walls and hand-building a particle accelerator. Time to get to work. Stark Industries headquarters. Why isn't there a single person in R&D today? The sound of high heels echoed through the empty floor with every sharp click. The usually lively Stark R&D department was inexplicably deserted today. The unfamiliar atmosphere, so different from normal, made Pepper Potts's steps grow more and more cautious. Why would Tony suddenly call me here? And why clear everyone out first? Pepper frowned and walked forward slowly. Could he be trying to take advantage of the empty place too? No, that's not right. Pepper's sharp instincts instantly caught a thread of something strange and wrong. Looking around at the slightly unfamiliar environment, she stopped dead in her tracks. The next second, a chill shot straight up her spine. Alarm flashing in her heart, Pepper spun around without hesitation and bolted back the way she had come. A heavy alloy blast door slammed shut without warning, letting out a deafening roar. Dull metallic footsteps suddenly rang out from every direction, mixed with the hum of motors turning. In the dead silence of the empty space, the sound was especially jarring. Who's there? Pepper threw herself against a thick concrete wall not far away. Only now, when she realized she might actually be in danger, did she start forcing herself to breathe. At the same time, she slipped her trembling right hand into the small purse she carried with her and quietly dialed a number. Only then did her nerves calm a little. A man's mechanically distorted voice rang out, openly dripping with arrogance and contempt, as if this little game of cat and mouse delighted him. As the steel footsteps drew closer and closer, the surrounding lights gradually dimmed. In the next instant, a giant steel hand smashed down hard, punching straight through the thick wall behind Pepper before curling lightly around her waist. Don't be afraid. I'm not going to let you die that easily. The solid wall was utterly fragile in the intruder's grasp. In no time at all, it was torn apart and reduced to debris across the floor. As the dust rained down, Pepper, trembling all over, let out a sharp scream without thinking. A steel monster more than 3 meters tall stood silently in front of her, bright white light blazing from its eyes and chest, flooding the area with harsh illumination. Who are you? Pepper slipped her hand out of her purse without drawing notice and forced herself to sound calm. With a heavy metallic clank, the lights in Ironmonder's eyes went dark. Its thick chest compartment opened, revealing the smug face of Obadiah inside. The moment she saw who it was, Pepper's pupils shrank sharply. As if deliberately emphasizing it, she raised her voice toward the direction of her purse and said, Obadiah, where did you get that suit of armor? What exactly are you trying to do? Pepper, Tony keeps talking about shutting down Stark Industries' weapons division, but he himself built something even more powerful in the Middle East. Watching the fear written all over Pepper from head to toe, Obadiah's expression turned grim and icy. He wants to destroy the work of my last 30 years. He wants to destroy Stark Industries. No chance. As soon as he finished speaking, the Ironmonger armor sealed shut again, and thick jets of flame blasted from beneath the suit's feet. Obadiah grabbed Pepper in one hand, and the two of them shot into the sky, racing straight toward Tony's house. I'm going to make him taste what it feels like to lose everything too. Get ready to die, Tony Stark. Betty, don't walk me out any farther. In another dark corner of the city, Bruce Banner looked at the woman before him with aching tenderness. She was the lover who had followed him through hardship after hardship all this way. He reached out and gently cupped Betty's soft cheek, brushing away the dust on her face before bending slightly and kissing away the tears from her eyes. You're Ross's daughter. There's no reason for you to suffer through this with me. If nothing unexpected happens, my trail is probably already sitting on his desk by now. Banner forced a bitter smile onto his face. At this point, I have no other choice. I have to leave. Take care, Betty. Banner stared into Betty's eyes without blinking, while their clasped hands quietly slipped apart. Banner. As tears gradually blurred her vision, Banner himself also became more and more indistinct in Betty's eyes. Betty, I'll come back. I promise. In the dim alley, Banner turned and left. Before long, his figure disappeared completely from Betty's sight. With the physical stamina forged through constant flight, Banner moved quickly through the city. Suddenly, a tremendous roar from high above reached his ears. He looked up just in time to see a huge, unidentified object dragging a bright tail of flame as it came straight toward him. This is the middle of the city. Has Ross gone insane? End of chapter. Get plus 30 extra chapters on P at TR3 on Zalem. Every 300 power stones equals 1 bonus chapter drop. Thanks for reading. Chapter 113, 1131-17 words. Damn it, Ross moved again this fast. Banner gritted his teeth and turned to run without a second thought. That thing isn't some drone loaded with a special weapon, is it? Ross really has gone insane. The instant he saw it, Banner almost instinctively assumed Ross had developed some brand new piece of equipment specifically designed to deal with him. Even as he ran, Banner kept glancing back from time to time, trying to figure out what the thing actually was. The flying object was incredibly fast. In barely a few breaths, it had already crossed nearly a third of the sky. I can't just sit here and wait to die. After only a brief look at its direction, Banner immediately broke into a full sprint toward an area with a much lower population density. The city he was in was not far from the sea. Ahead of him was a spot near the bay. If he could get into the water, Ross would have a much harder time catching him. How does Ross even know where I am? He changed direction several times, but despite being high up in the air, the pursuer was able to alter course without the slightest hesitation every single time. Ross's cunning and sharpness far exceeded Banner's expectations. No matter where he hid, Ross could always track him down with the precision of a hound. Hearing the distant roar grow closer and closer, Banner clenched his jaw, and his steps became faster and faster. Without realizing it, under the strain of the increasingly violent exertion, Banner's heart rate also began to skyrocket. Very soon, it broke past 200. Banner, just hold on a little longer. Just a little. Banner ground his teeth, so hard the veins on his forehead bulged out. His skin was growing greener and greener. When he turned to look up into the sky and saw the flying object drawing nearer, a feral roar almost beyond human came tearing out of his throat. He moved faster and faster until everything around him blurred into streaks in his eyes. The landscape around him grew more and more desolate. Dozens of kilometers away, he could already faintly hear the sound of the ocean. But overhead, the flying object had begun to slow down as well. Just a little more. I was only a little more away. Ross, why do you always have to push me? You've gone too far. A violent fury surged through his chest. In that instant, Banner finally stopped suppressing the rage in his heart. Amid his howl, his body grew larger and larger, and his skin quickly turned completely green. A furious roar exploded into the air. Freed from Banner's restraint, Hulk's eyes burned red as they locked without hesitation onto the steel monster speeding in from the distance. The next second, every muscle in Hulk's body swelled wildly, all that monstrous power driving straight into the earth. The hard ground split open. Hulk bent his knees low, then launched upward and slammed toward the incoming figure. Slow down. Slow down. At the same time, Pepper Potts was being held tightly in Ironmonger's grasp as the two of them flew toward Tony Stark's home, at a pace that was neither especially fast nor especially slow. This was already the result of Obadiah deliberately slowing down in order to humiliate Tony. Otherwise, with Pepper's physical condition, the rushing air from high-speed flight would have knocked her unconscious in no time. As the wind screamed past Pepper's ears, she thought she faintly heard a roar. What was that? Inside the armor, the onboard radar system issued a warning almost immediately. As a capitalist who had long since abandoned every trace of conscience, Obadiah was not especially familiar with the suit's systems. He could manage only the simplest functions. It was not until the alarm sounded that he reacted. Ironmonger's visual assistance system activated automatically. Very quickly, it highlighted a huge green figure directly in front of Obadiah's eyes. Where the hell did that thing come from? Watching the monster leap from the ground and, in the blink of an eye, vault all the way into the sky before lunging straight at him, Obadiah suddenly felt a stab of panic for no clear reason. He immediately swung Ironmonger sharply aside to evade. So he's not one of Ross's people. Only after reaching the air did Hulk finally get a clear look at what had been chasing him all this time. It seemed to be a man in metal armor, holding a woman hostage in his arms. After seeing him, the woman did not seem surprised. Instead, she closed her eyes. Hulk was not very intelligent, but he instantly caught the flash of despair in her eyes. That expression almost immediately made him think of Betty. Hulk froze for a moment. The moment Betty's face rose in his mind, he twisted in midair without hesitation, threw his arms wide, and lunged at Ironmonger again. Ding ding. A gentle ringtone sounded through Tony's spacious laboratory. Who is it? Fenris yawned and finally woke up. He slowly reached up, took the arc reactor off his forehead, and answered the phone. Fenris, I need help. A woman's slightly trembling voice came through the phone, as though she were suppressing overwhelming terror. It snapped Fenris fully awake in an instant. Voicemail from Pepper Potts. Fenris sat up, staring at the message in surprise. Fenris, you're awake. An energetic male voice came from not far away. Fenris turned toward it and saw that the lab, which had at least been somewhat tidy before, had now become something else entirely. Chunks of broken concrete were scattered everywhere, along with exposed electrical wiring. The surrounding walls had all been knocked through, and countless thick pipes looped around the laboratory in a massive ring. Tony Stark stood in the distance with a giant wrench in his hand, head tilted as he tinkered nonstop with the piping. A delicate prism sat quietly in place, while on a stand not far away rested a triangular object emitting a faint white glow. Fenris, come take a look at the particle accelerator I built from scratch in one afternoon. Now that Fenris was awake, Tony seemed to have instantly found someone to talk to. His face was full of pride as he introduced his masterpiece. My father really did leave me a treasure. It's a mysterious isotope, something no one in human history has ever discovered before. And today, I'm going to create that element out of thin air with this particle accelerator. Like someone who had finally opened the floodgates, Tony launched into a non-stop stream of words the moment he started. He hoisted the huge wrench onto his shoulder and waved Fenris over, motioning for him to come help. With this new element, the arc reactor's performance should multiply several times over. It'll be more efficient for you to use too. What do you think? Not much. Fenris walked over and shoved the phone into Tony's arms. Your girlfriend's in danger. End of chapter. Get plus 30 extra chapters on P at TR3 on Zalem. Every 300 power stones equals 1 bonus chapter drop. Thanks for reading. Chapter 114, 1-1 for 1-1-5 words. Obadiah, where did you get that suit of armor? I'm going to make Tony Stark have a good taste of what it feels like to lose everything too. The conversation, distorted by a faint layer of static, came through the phone. Pepper's forced calm, trembling with fear underneath, cut into Tony like a dull blade. After a burst of explosive noise, Fenris's phone was crushed to pieces in Tony's hand. The joy from discovering the new element was gone from his eyes, replaced entirely by cold indifference. Sir, you have an incoming call. At that moment, Jarvis suddenly spoke. It is Nick Fury. Tony, I just got word on my end that Obadiah from your Stark Industries may be planning something against you soon. The next instant, Nick Fury's voice echoed from all around the room. As far as we know, your earlier kidnapping was also orchestrated by this man. If you trust me, you'd better be on your guard. This is exclusive intel, and I took time out of my extremely busy schedule personally to call and tell you. Thanks, but it's not necessary anymore. Tony casually cut off Fury's communication, the chill in his eyes nearly spilling over. Jarvis, prep the suit. Track Pepper's phone signal. Redirect the Stark satellite. Sync the suit to the satellite feed. Yes, sir. Tony moved quickly to the armor platform. Amid a crisp series of mechanical assembly sounds, the freshly repaired Mark III was fitted onto him at high speed. Obadiah is heading this way, and Ms. Potts's phone signal has remained aligned with his movement trajectory. Jarvis's calm voice continued. They are now less than 50 kilometers away from us, but for some reason they have stopped. Sir, she should be safe for the moment. The Stark satellite shifted position with impressive speed, and Ironmonger had never attempted to conceal its route. Very soon, one clear satellite image after another was displayed in front of Tony. That's probably the only good news. The suit was fully equipped in moments. Tony let out a breath of relief, and the thrusters fired instantly. Thanks to the physical condition that now far surpassed ordinary human limits, the suit's acceleration restrictions had been removed. At full thrust, the armor launched straight up from where it stood, smashed effortlessly through the mansion ceiling, and shot into the sky trailing a long blazing wake. In only a few seconds, with thunderous noise roaring all around him, Tony had already broken the sound barrier. This kind of flight intensity was something he would never have dared attempt before, but now his mind was full of Pepper comforting him, and he had no attention left for anything else. Where's Fenris? Is he still in the mansion? Tony asked while watching the images being fed from the Stark satellite. Fenris left the moment you ended your call with Nick Fury, Jarvis answered honestly. In the sky not far away, a brilliant rainbow-colored trail stretched into the distance along Tony's path. Jarvis thoughtfully highlighted the route Fenris had intentionally left behind inside Tony's helmet display. He's annoyingly considerate. Only after seeing that did the tight knot in Tony's chest finally begin to ease. Dozens of kilometers away, on a battlefield near the bay, Obadiah was gritting his teeth as he continuously controlled Ironmonger through sharp aerial evasions, dodging the green monster that had appeared out of nowhere. Pepper's physical condition had never been particularly good. How could she possibly endure this kind of high-intensity maneuvering? After only a few evasive bursts, the sudden acceleration had already pushed her to the limit. As the world in front of her blurred more and dizziness overwhelmed her mind, Pepper's eyes rolled back, and she collapsed limply against Ironmonger's arm, passing out on the spot. On the ground, Hulk stared at the steel monster. It was only a little bigger than he was, and its body looked clumsy and heavy, yet every single time it barely managed to avoid his pounces. Worse, it always seemed able to fire micromissiles at exactly the moment he was dropping back down. Those attacks were nothing more than tickles to Hulk. They could not truly hurt him, but they were maddening all the same. Then he noticed Pepper had actually passed out, and his eyes suddenly turned red. With one furious roar, his body visibly swelled even larger, until it was now bigger than Ironmonger itself. Rock shattered apart as Hulk leaped high into the air once again, and lunged for Ironmonger several hundred meters above the ground. Ironmonger's built-in intelligent support program really was powerful enough, because Hulk's mind right now was simple, and his fighting style had absolutely no tactics to it. With the suit assisting him, even Obadiah, who was not especially skilled in combat, quickly adapted to Hulk's attack rhythm. With the advantage of flight, plus the large arsenal loaded into Ironmonger, he could kite Hulk with ease. Watching the green brute come charging at him again, Obadiah calmly controlled the suit to evade. At the same time, the shoulder plating opened and Stark-designed micromissiles were primed and ready to fire. But this time, Hulk moved far beyond the limits he had shown before. Before Obadiah could fully dodge clear, he suddenly felt his right leg drop with alarming weight. Then, as a massive hammering impact rang out, the alarm for right leg thruster failure blared immediately. The sudden turn of events threw him into panic. Somehow, Hulk had latched directly onto Ironmonger's right leg. His powerful skin let him ignore the searing heat of the thruster exhaust. He slammed down with one brutal punch, and the expensive thruster was instantly destroyed. Without enough thrust to keep it aloft, Ironmonger could no longer maintain its hover, and began plummeting rapidly toward the ground. Hulk clung to the right leg and kept hammering away with his fists. Thick smoke poured out as the rate of descent increased even further. Activate fire suppression. Deploy stabilizers. Although a series of corrective measures had already been triggered automatically by the intelligent support system, and the smoke had been extinguished, nothing could stop the increasingly rapid fall. A violent sense of weightlessness hit. Under the rush of adrenaline, Pepper Potts actually woke up from unconsciousness. As the ground rushed closer and closer beneath her, her pupils expanded sharply, and she almost instinctively squeezed her eyes shut. Even now, Hulk still had Ironmonger's leg in a death grip, refusing to let go, looking as if he meant to drag it down with him to the bitter end. 500 meters. 300 meters. 50 meters. The speed kept climbing. Just as all three of them were about to smash into the ground, a light fluttering sound drifted in from the distance. A brilliant trail flashed across the sky, cutting an elegant arc through the air. Amid Pepper's uncontrollable, piercing scream, a pair of strong arms wrapped around her waist at the very last possible instant. Don't be afraid. End of chapter. Get plus 30 extra chapters on P at TR3 on Zalem. Every 300 power stones equals 1 bonus chapter drop. Thanks for reading. Chapter 115. 115148 for words. Ironmonger's thick metal arm had been clamped around Pepper so tightly that no matter how hard she had struggled before, it had not budged even in the slightest. But at this moment, a pair of long-fingered hands pressed down on it and pried it open with effortless ease. The locked metal joints were forcibly twisted, letting out a shrill mechanical wail. There was not the slightest pause in the motion. It was so smooth it hardly seemed real, as if what Fenris held in his hands was not a war machine forged from advanced metal at all, but nothing more than a rubber toy he could squeeze however he liked. Pepper only felt the pressure around her waist suddenly loosen. The next instant, Fenris had pulled her completely free from Ironmonger's grasp. Stop screaming. You've already been saved. The whole thing took less than a second. The beautiful trail left in the air did not even pause for an instant. After rescuing Pepper, Fenris carried her upward into the wind. The speed, originally too fast for the naked eye to follow, gradually slowed to adapt to an ordinary human body. Only when Fenris's slightly helpless voice sounded beside her ear, and Pepper realized she had not slammed into the ground along with everything else, did the trembling in her body finally begin to ease. I've been saved. Her piercing screams at last came to a halt. When Pepper opened her eyes, she found herself gripping Fenris's arm tightly, while behind him 2 pairs of slender light wings with a span of more than 10 meters beat slowly, suspending them quietly in the sky. A massive crash sounded below them. Hulk and Ironmonger had both hit the ground, smashing a sizable crater into the dark black rocky cliffside by the coast. Fortunately, Hulk's body was powerful enough that a fall of only a few hundred meters meant almost nothing to him. After climbing back up, he merely shook his head, and had already recovered. Obadiah was not so lucky. Even with the armor protecting him, he was still only an ordinary man. He looked badly hurt, and took quite a while to rise again. Looking at Hulk standing not far in front of him, Obadiah almost instinctively wanted to get away. This thing that had appeared out of nowhere was completely unreasonable. Attacking him for no reason would have been bad enough, but it had actually dragged him straight out of the sky. Now one of Ironmonger's thrusters was offline. Without the advantage of flight, was he not going to get torn to pieces by that creature? But just as Obadiah instinctively fell into a defensive stance, Hulk's attention had already shifted to Fenris, who had suddenly appeared. His bloodshot eyes locked tightly onto the moon in the air. For some reason, that person gave him an especially familiar feeling. Hulk felt like he should know him, but his simple mind could not remember no matter how hard it tried. Then Hulk's gaze fell on Pepper Potts beside Fenris. A blurred image of Betty being held hostage flashed through his mind. As if some hidden trigger had just been struck, Hulk suddenly roared in fury. Then, to Obadiah's utter disbelief, he leaped high again and swung his right fist hard toward Fenris. You know this big guy? Fenris had come only to save someone. He had fully intended to enjoy a good show between Ironmonger and the Hulk, so he had not expected to become Hulk's target in the blink of an eye. He shot one incredulous glance at the utterly bewildered Pepper, casually tossed her aside, then beat his wings once and vanished from where he had been standing. "Get back down there." Fenris was nothing like a bulky machine such as Ironmonger. His figure flickered once, and he was already behind Hulk. Taking advantage of the fact that Hulk had no leverage while hanging in midair, Fenris sharply twisted his waist and turned, then whipped his right leg out like a Godzilla tail strike. Though he wore a human shape, Fenris's own strength was anything but small. That enormous force poured into Hulk's body without the slightest restraint. The downward strike of his leg directly crushed the momentum of Hulk's upward charge. The two figures, one large and one small, looked wildly disproportionate when they collided, and yet the impact exploded with tremendous force. Even the air itself seemed to compress in that instant. The next moment, a massive shock wave blasted outward in every direction. Since Hulk's birth, although he had constantly suffered bombardment from General Ross's endless weapons, he had never encountered such pure suppression by brute force. Under that overwhelming power, his body stalled in midair, then slammed heavily back toward the ground. The hard stone surface was smashed into another enormous crater. But this time, Hulk lay on his back in the pit, and did not get up at once. The world's gone insane. Off to one side, Obadiah had witnessed everything from beginning to end. In that instant, the beliefs he had held for decades felt as though they had collapsed. A winged man, someone who did not even look particularly strong, had actually beaten a muscle-brained monster into this state. From within the crater, Hulk stared unblinkingly into the sky. For some reason, a surge of anger abruptly rose inside him, as if that man should have been his friend, and yet had hit him this hard anyway. A sense of hurt that even Hulk himself did not notice was completely transformed into rage. His body began swelling again without warning. In only a few seconds, Hulk, who had originally been a size smaller than Ironmonger, expanded until he stood a full head taller than it. Obadiah swallowed hard on instinct. The thick armor wrapped around him no longer gave him even the slightest sense of safety. After instinctively backing up 2 steps, all the arrogance and confidence swelling inside him earlier had completely vanished. He was now terrified of drawing the attention of either of those monsters. Absolutely no way. He was just a businessman. There was no need for him to stand out in public. At the same time, high in the sky, Fenris moved like a phantom. From tossing Pepper aside to suppressing Hulk, all it took was one sweep of his light wings before he reappeared next to Pepper and pulled her firmly under his protection once more. "You okay?" "I'm okay." Still shaken, Pepper patted her chest. After so many shocks in a single day, she was starting to develop the strange feeling that she might actually be getting used to it. Amid the huge scream of thrusters, a red and gold figure shot in from the distance. Pepper only felt her vision blur, and the next moment Tony, clad in armor, had already come to a stop beside her. Tony took Pepper from him. Once he saw she was unharmed, his voice beneath the faceplate immediately filled with relief. "You scared me to death. Are you okay?" "Fenris got here in time, so I'm okay." Pepper nodded and threw her arms tightly around Tony's cold armor, though her body was still trembling slightly. "Fenris, I need you to take Pepper back." Tony's gaze immediately locked onto the towering Ironmonger below, his voice thick with hatred. Tony had treated him like an uncle of his own, yet for selfish gain he had tried to destroy Pepper and kill Tony himself. If Fenris had not been here, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Rage surged through him so strongly that even the armor seemed to sense it, letting out a low mechanical growl. "Fenris, please take care of Tony." A portal opened at once. Even though Pepper was worried sick, she ultimately went obediently back to Tony's mansion. "I'm the one being targeted too." Fenris lowered his head and quickly spotted Hulk, who had already straightened up out of the crater once more. Seeing that Hulk's body had swollen larger again, Fenris's right hand almost instinctively went to the battle axe at his waist. His eyes sank, and deep in his consciousness, the 3rd page of the Titan Codex had already flipped open, eager to move. "Forget it. If I split him with that axe, there won't be much of a friendship left afterward." With a light sigh, Fenris shook his head. Deep inside his body, the atomic furnace began running at full power, and his eyes also lit with a faint blue glow. Let's see how you like a Godzilla-style beatdown. End of chapter. Get plus 30 extra chapters on P at TR3 on Zalem. Every 300 power stones equals 1 bonus chapter drop. Thanks for reading. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Novels Wonderland.